and welcome to the My Career podcast with Pathway CTM. Izzy, we're on the sofa in our own office.
We are, exciting.
How does it feel?
Good, it feels really exciting, happy to be here. We've got the sign, we've got the curtain, we're ready to go.
We've got the lanyards on. No, only I have. So we're in our own office, we're excited to be doing the podcast. Izzy, we're going to be doing our first podcast on just a little bit more about Pathway CTM.
Yeah.
So I guess, do you want to just maybe give a quick synopsis of your story? What brought you to Pathway?
Sure. So I've been at Pathway for just over 4 years. Started in as an account manager and now I'm head of employer partnerships. But before that I was an apprentice for 2.5 years. So totally understood the issues that a lot of our student network have in not being able to get an apprenticeship and wanted to change that, and have been doing so for 4.5 years.
Yeah, amazing. And I've started the business 13 years ago, just went back into my old school and I wanted to help young people do really well and maximise their potential. And the USP that we kind of realised at the beginning of the business was supporting young people, phoning them up, helping them with applications. And that's something that we've really scaled. And employers always they love it when we do it with them, but actually we need to market that message out a little bit better. So that's what we're going to try and do for this first episode, is try and explain a little bit better about our USP and our mentorship. So Izzy, I suppose, again, I'm going to ask you to summarise a bit, as you do brilliantly, but mentorship, what does that kind of mean to you in terms of Pathway?
Yeah, so a lot of our young people come to us very confused and overwhelmed by the whole apprenticeship space. So for us, it's all about supporting them from the minute they join the programme all the way through to hopefully getting an offer with a big employer. So they sign up to our programme, they tell us all about their school, how old they are, what gender they are, their sociability status, and also what they're interested in. And then off the back of that, they'll receive comms and information based on the roles that they've told us they're interested in or the location that they're based in. And then it's over to our amazing delivery team to pick up the phone, make sure that they're marketed to, invite them to the right events to build their confidence and to mentor them on that journey. So for us, we understand all of our employer partners' application processes from start to finish to make sure that we're giving the best advice. We're preparing them for their interviews, we're preparing them for their assessment centres. We've got the hints and tips on how they can really do well and succeed in the video interviews and the online assessments. So we work with those young people to support them through each stage, and then fingers crossed they get an offer and they tell us about it.
I think we can stop the podcast there then, that's done. Hey, I want to pass over to Vince just to see, Vince, what does mentoring mean to you in your role? And actually introduce yourself please as well.
Thank you very much, Chris. Hello everyone, my name is Vince Tark and I'm here as a delivery manager here at Pathway CTM. A little whistle-stop tour into kind of who I am and my background. I started as an apprentice when I left school, and then since then my career has been pretty much all in careers, from recruitment agencies to training providers, and quite recently working at Virgin Media O2 within their future careers team. And I love that question about what mentorship means to me, because ultimately it means to me understanding each individual's journey isn't the same, and also kind of taking into consideration what it's like as well as a young person coming into the world of work, especially when they've been in education for so long. So mentorship means to me is, being there for somebody, being able to answer questions, being able to help guide their career, because ultimately most young people have the answers to where they want their career to go. They just need someone to ask them the right questions so that they can answer it for themselves. But ultimately about providing information, advice and guidance, and allowing individuals to make an informed decision about what's right for them, because everyone's different and has different requirements.
Yeah, look, Vince, I love that. Ex-Virgin Media, so you were on the flip side recruiting apprentices, weren't you?
Indeed.
And now you're there helping support them get in.
Exactly.
With Pathway CTM. And you, Vince, and you, Izzy, both ex-apprentices. So you've got live ex-apprentices. Yeah, did I say it right? Apprentices, apprenticeship, sometimes you get tongue-tied.
Absolutely.
But you've got that lived experience, but surely that really resonates with students when you speak to them.
100%. It's kind of like that, practicing what you're preaching, and also being able to share that journey as well of what you went through and the barriers that you experienced, and how you're removing those barriers for the future generations to allow for them to have the best opportunities and options.
Yeah.
Amazing, Vince. Thanks so much. So let's now look at some of the problem statements that we see in the market quite a lot, and just see what you think about it. Then Vince, I'll come over to you, see if you've got any examples. So the first one, if I'm an employer, here's my challenge. So I've got high volumes of applications, but not the right diversity numbers. So I'm just not getting the diversity through my applications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for a lot of our employers, that's a big problem, especially with women, females into the whole STEM and finance space. So for us, that's about getting the message out there to young girls, like as a specific example, about careers in finance. Now that means that we've got to get more people at the start of the funnel because they've got the volumes but not the right people. So how can we increase those diverse groups that aren't currently in that? And that is through mail outs, comms, targeting our student network, and mainly talking about the skills and almost reverse selling the opportunity to these young people that they might not think that they're good at it. So if you're looking at doing, a career in STEM, are you analytical? Are you detail orientated? Do you like solving problems? And we'll use those kind of skills in our messaging and our communications to the young people to then get them involved and then say, well, I bet you didn't think this was a career that you could do, and then teach them about it that way. So that's the initial communication. But then also the delivery teams like Vince and all of our other amazing team going out and spotting these amazing young people at our events and saying, you might not have thought about this employer, but as you're here today, why don't you apply to this opportunity? Which is something that we definitely support our employers with, and kind of using them to support each other in different sectors, and getting those diverse groups, underrepresented groups through the system, through using our database and really segmenting that into the audiences that we know each of the employer partners want.
Nice. So Vince, why are you and your team good at getting those underrepresented students through the doors of these big brands?
Why are we good at that? Ultimately because we're on the ground. We're walking into these schools, building relationships with quite a lot of these schools, and educating as well. I think that's one of the biggest parts of what we do, is educating students, getting the opportunity to stand in front of them and showcase the opportunities, and also just kind of linking it with things that they might enjoy, like asking the questions. For example, who looks after the budgeting in your household? And someone might say, well, it's me. I set the budget for my mum when she's going shopping. And then that allows for us to be like, have you thought about finance? And if you're going to study finance, what would your preference be in terms of, would you prefer the academic element of route, or would you prefer to kind of do the theory alongside with the practical? And then we start breaking that down even further. So again, it's kind of about building relationships on the ground with education partners, and then really educating their students into kind of understanding the apprenticeship opportunity against the university option.
Yeah, again, I love it. And so we're talking there about diversity of applications, but then I've also got another problem here, is maybe lack of brand awareness within the actual specific sector, because sometimes it's not just looking at the job or the company, but it's actually sector-wide. So Izzy, coming back to you there, what do Pathway do in your teams to support maybe with more sector-wide attraction campaigns?
A lot of our partners have very similar themes and skills that they're looking for in young people, and a lot of our students actually don't really know what they want. So in that initial survey form, when we ask the young people to sign up to Pathway, we can really use the information that they give us in that form to target them about opportunities that perhaps they didn't originally think about. So for a lot of young people, maths is actually the highest studied A-level, so they have that, and that means that they could do finance, tech, or engineering. So how can we use our knowledge of what they've told us they're interested in and send them other opportunities based on maybe not if they've ticked finance, but saying, have you thought about tech as an opportunity, or have you thought about engineering? So it's all about using our database, and again, using the mentoring, the application processes, the employees that we work with, and knowing what they're looking for as a partner, to then share that with the young people and say, look, I know you've got through to this assessment centre with PwC, but have you thought about looking at opportunities with AWE, they're more engineering side, but what you've told us about what you want to do is really telling me that, I think that you would be great at this opportunity. So just listening, that one-to-one conversation that we have with those young people is really, really important, and the relationships that we build with them enable us to really share different opportunities with them, which then ultimately solves the problem that a lot of employers have, where if they are a big finance professional services organisation, they still need data analysts, they still need software engineers, and it's just sharing that messaging with the right young people and using our database in the right way.
Yeah, I love it, Izzy. And Vince, I guess, have you got any clients that work on that basis, where they're all about sector first, and then maybe the other stuff comes second?
So one of my clients, FCA, are quite keen in kind of educating people on what they do as an organisation. And I think Izzy mentioned it really well, which is, of course, they're known for being the financial conduct authority. Having said that though, they've got so many different roles available within their organisation. So they offer things like cybersecurity, data analysts, and to a lot of individuals, they wouldn't be aware that there's so many opportunities available like that within an organisation like FCA. They've got paralegal apprenticeships, HR apprenticeships, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I understand. So looking at the different types of roles that you've got there that represent the sector. So FCA, they look after sector association, and then you've got brands and companies and people within it. But then I guess sometimes JLR, AWE, they might actually want to go sector specific rather than just looking at what their roles are within their company, because then they'll attract more students if they go a bit more macro with their branding.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're an engineering organisation like JLR, AWE, then that's what students know you for. Therefore, they're going to go to you. So if you do start to disperse into other opportunities and other roles, then might you lose that amazing talent who's always wanted to apply for you. And also, you might not have enough space for everyone that wants to apply to you in that certain sector. So I think it's a real balance in increasing the diversity amongst engineering as a whole. It's primarily very white and also very male. So diversifying females and into different ethnicities is really important for a lot of our brands, and therefore they talk about engineering, they go to engineering events, and that's a real huge focus because that's ultimately the core of their business.
Yeah, thanks, Izzy. Cool. So I just want to move on to one more point, just briefly. So student reneges, some people say renegades, some people say reneges. I'm pretty sure the second is correct. But student reneges, particularly late in the process, like results day, for example.
Yeah.
I think like reneges is over 20% across student recruitment market, so it's really high. What does Pathway CTM, and particularly like your mentorship approach, how does that help towards that, against that?
Yeah, so the reneges piece has been a lot more of a problem in the last few years. It used to be very specific to grads, but as apprentices are applying for more, they're ultimately getting more offers, which is great for the young people, but not so great for the employers, because then that young person sometimes has 3 or 4 offers and they've got to therefore reject 2 or 3. So for us, it's all about putting the student first, as annoying as that is for employers, that student needs to make sure it's right for them. So what we want to understand is, how do they feel about that brand? Have they even been to the brand's office? How was the assessment process? How did it make them feel? Just so that we can take all of those notes down and then kind of give some of the brands a heads up. That's the main problem that we're solving for employers here, is saying, look, you've got these 10 amazing candidates. We're just letting you know you're not their only offer, and this is why. And especially for employers who still have totally virtual processes, I think it's really important they go back to in-person, because students just feel way more connected to an organisation if they've stepped foot in the office, if they've met people face-to-face. So for us, it's all about ensuring that the employers are aware of that, and those conversations all come through that one-to-one mentoring and the notes that we take and the relationships that we build with those young people.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, and Vince, so when you were at Virgin Media and you were trying to attract diverse talent and make sure that people joined you and they didn't renege, how would you feel about now you've been in this role for however many months? Let us know, because I always seem to get it wrong by a month or so. Let us know how you would feel about Vince looking after your account at Virgin Media and the stuff that you're doing to make sure you're mitigating against that.
That's a real great question, to be honest with you, Chris. And I think it starts once again from the mentoring initially. Having those conversations earlier on, building those relationships with young people ultimately means that these young people are going to be providing us with these updates. But one of the biggest things that I find that helps with the reneges is the aftercare. Because obviously once the student's been offered, the likelihood is they're going to inform us who've mentored them throughout the process. So once we know that information, we kind of act as such as an additional keep warm strategy. So you've got the organisation, as Izzy said, we collect all that feedback because we want to ensure that our employers that we're working with are fully aware of everything that's being said about their process. But in addition to that, then we add an extra layer where we provide an aftercare service. How are you feeling? What organisation you're leaning towards? Why are you leaning towards that organisation? When are you going to let the organisation you don't want to work for know that you're going to go with X? And advising them around that as well, letting them know at the earliest convenience. Obviously sometimes it's a bit tricky because it can be result dependent, so it's almost like with a lot of students they want to wait to that moment of results day to find out which role they will be successful with, or if they have the option of both. So that's always going to play a bit of a part into this. But I think providing that aftercare service and almost acting as an additional keep warm strategy for larger employers is definitely impactful in keeping these individuals not reneging from organisations.
Yeah, so you think the work you're doing and the work that your colleagues do is working?
Oh, 100%. Because we got to think about, from an apprentice journey, some of these individuals are waiting 6 to 8 months to start, sometimes longer. So during that time, it's all about, well, who's communicating to them? And I'm not saying the employers aren't, but of course, I'm sure that's coming in segments or staggered throughout that timeline, if you like. Whereas, because we're so close to that student and those students, it makes us be able to, one, get the honesty from them, I think is really important, but also, as mentioned, just keeping them warm, keeping them thinking about the apprenticeship, but also keeping them thinking about the things that they could do to keep themselves prepared. Sorry, there was a lot of keep in that sentence, but it's all about making sure that they can prepare themselves for the journey ahead, because it is a big step from education into an apprenticeship opportunity.
Yeah, I love it, Vince. Thanks, you speak so well. And I'm going to guess you've been here 4 months?
That is correct indeed.
There you go, I got it.
You got that one right, Chris.
I did get it. Hey, and then just coming back to Izzy there, because it is like, we talk about how we're 10 times more likely to get a young person through the doors and getting into an apprenticeship than if they weren't to choose the Pathway CTM support, which is free. Could you just maybe elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Yeah, so last year the statistic for apprenticeship applications was 1 in 66 young people nationwide were getting an offer, whereas our statistic was 1 in 6. So we're really proud of that, in that the students that are applying to us are therefore going on and getting offers through the mentoring and through the one-to-one support. And that is about everything that's been mentioned around the phone calls, us building relationships with the young people, sharing with them the information about specific employer programs and application processes. There's such a lack of knowledge, but also so much, information out there for young people that they get quite overwhelmed. So being able to break that down for them means that we've been 10 times more likely to get them into some of our brands, which is really great.
Yeah, I like it. And I want to introduce News for Safer is Elijah. We'll introduce you in a second. So you work with different brands as well, Elijah, like looking after them, work with different students. Low quality applications. So let's move on to that. If I'm a company that works with Pathway and I need you to solve that problem of low quality applications, surely what Izzy's telling me there, you guys are 10 times more likely to get a young person through the doors. Is that what it feels like, and that's how it is with your clients?
I'm Elijah. I'm a delivery manager here at Pathway CTM. I've actually been here for about 4 months now, so pretty new to the job and pretty fresh in my career. Only graduated from university this time last year, so this is actually my second job. So when we're looking at sort of applications and lower quality candidates, I actually currently work with a client on that, and what we'll do is we'll take students through the whole application process and guide them through each step. So for instance, you see students from varying backgrounds, and we don't want them to feel that they don't have the ability to get the role just because they haven't had the exposure that others might have in better schools or the network that they have around them. So what we do is we provide a pretty tailored process for the student and what their requirements and their needs. So when we look to kind of develop that, we'll then work with the employer and kind of get coached on their application process, and then kind of build upon that, and then kind of provide all the knowledge we have from across the different employers we work with to then give them the best head start in doing that first application and then seeing where it goes from there, and also providing that support even if they aren't successful too. I had a call the other day with a student who unfortunately wasn't able to undertake their apprenticeship due to having kind of their A-level results wasn't as they'd expected. So then we kind of just spoke in a pretty candid manner about what the options were, and that's when students kind of come to you and ask you what they should do, and that's where we don't tell them what they should do. We kind of provide them with information on every option that there is, and obviously we want to push apprenticeships, but that might not be the right route for them right now. So then off the back of that, we provide them with resources. We give them sort of a bit of a tailored guidance how to use LinkedIn. And then obviously I connect with them and hopefully follow up with them and see them flourish in their future career, because that bad A-level result or not what you expected result isn't going to be the make or break of where you get to in your career.
Yeah, you can see the way you speak. We're lucky to have you in our team. So we had Izzy and Vince, who have obviously done apprenticeships before, so people really listen to them and they're inspired by them. You've had different types of education and you're Gen Z, which is important in our business.
Yeah.
I'm clinging on to that. there or thereabouts, maybe not. But why do you think that you're good in this job? I suppose you haven't done an apprenticeship, but you've got other drivers, right?
I think the key driver is for me personally is having the ability of access to resources. So that's what Pathway does best. It provides everyone with an opportunity to see kind of the pathways, excuse the pun, what they have that they can take. So, when I send students kind of like a pre-mentoring brief, I talk to them and say, this is a bit about me, and I kind of want to help you scope out all the opportunities you have. And I've really seen kind of, being a recent grad myself, I think it's around, one graduate role per 140 graduates now, and seeing that, it's like, why would you not earn while you learn? That seems to me to be the best option right now. So kind of pushing students in the right direction and giving them the ability to understand that it isn't just the uni route, there is other ways and other processes that you can get involved in. And it's also providing teachers and parents with that knowledge too, because you don't want them to be closed-minded and follow the same track that they might have followed when that's kind of old news almost.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's amazing. Like, you have more chance of getting in as an apprentice than you do as a graduate, technically, like international market versus maybe a UK competitive market. But you've got way more chance, 10 times more chance maybe, coming through the Pathway program because of the support that you're giving. And you've really eloquently told us some of that, really. And it's really interesting to hear, and it's good to put it out there to you guys as well. But Izzy, sometimes diverse candidates in particular don't make it through the process, so from different backgrounds, whatever that might be, different challenges and stigmas and all the types of things that are wrong with society. How does Pathway CTM potentially really support those diverse students coming through the pipelines? Because it's not just about supporting the students with Elijah, but actually it's sharing that data and strategy back with the employers too, isn't it?
So for a lot of our employers, they do find that potentially they're getting those diverse candidates in the start of the funnel, which is usually a simple application form on their website asking, key details and then motivations for the role. However, as the students start to progress and the pipeline goes through the process, the next stage is usually either like a telephone interview or a video interview or an online assessment. That's when you can really start to see the diverse candidates starting to drop off. And we see that purely from lack of knowledge or someone at home or at school being able to support them. So that's where we can really step in, and as Elijah mentioned, understanding the employer process and the application process and what they're looking for, sometimes even doing it ourselves to really understand and know what that looks like.
And to make sure that every young person has that great opportunity, whether you're rich, poor, whatever background you're from. Elijah is also doing podcasts at the minute. We'll come on to that. I mean, Izzy, you're always on screen at the minute, doing lots of different podcasts. I enjoy doing it too, but what's really nice is we're getting way more of our delivery managers out there doing podcasts too, so that young people can see them, be inspired by them. But Elijah, talk us through what you're doing with Sony Music at the minute, because they've got a certain campaign around a lack of maybe brand awareness in certain pockets of the UK, and indeed around certain types of people not understanding what they can do in terms of accessing the music career and creative careers. So talk us a little bit through that campaign and what you're doing.
So what the kind of project that we're doing with Sony Music at the moment isn't necessarily around their applications, it's more around the London-centricness of the music industry. The big labels, the major labels are all based in London, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to spread the word almost about the music business, not just being necessarily an artist or a performer, what is happening behind the scenes, and that's kind of where we're trying to build out that knowledge for the students, parents and teachers across the UK. We've seen from a recent survey we did with some teachers through UK-wide, and there's a bit of a knowledge gap between the reality and the actual situation within the music industry. So it's kind of trying to break down those barriers and almost bust the myths that are currently kind of pretty prevalent across clearly the teachers that are feeding that back into the students. So almost giving them that confidence that they need to pursue a career in the creatives, and also not just necessarily pursue a career in the creatives, but follow your passion. So if you're good at maths, then that might not mean, okay, cool, you then need to become a mathematician or you need to go into finance, accounting, but can you become a commercial analyst at Sony, or can you become someone that does the digital side of it, looking at the digital analytics of how well the song is performing on Spotify or something like that, and not just thinking about that from the London perspective, but from the UK-wide perspective of how do you get into the industry.
And so you're doing that podcast to get out into all the schools and colleges around the UK. That will inspire more young people. Then what will happen if they're inspired and they want to apply? Where does it then flick into mentorship and support?
So the way I see that pivoting into sort of how Pathway can help and sort of promote you to feel empowered to apply to these roles would be through the webinar series that we're running with Sony that's running through till February. We've also got looking to get some other content out through our Teacher Zone where students can access some filming we did with various different professionals from within the Sony business. So it's just ways of basically providing you the knowledge that you need to understand the different roles and areas that you can work in. And then obviously coming to one of us to, have a conversation about Sony and the careers that they have there, and then, we can potentially put you in touch with someone from their team.
Amazing. Elijah, I know you've got to get off because we're in our office at the minute. We're just in a studio side room. You've got to get off and do a call. So thanks so much for jumping on our first pod in the office. So Elijah's just left the building off to do his phone call. I guess that's going to be different now. We're not in our usual studio, is he? We're going to have a little bit more back and forth around the office.
I know, it's exciting. We can get more people involved.
Yeah, definitely. First podcast, we were talking a little bit more about what Pathway do.
Yeah.
Some of this might go on the website. Do you think we did a good job of it?
I hope so. We've tried to explain it as much as possible in the student journey, but also what we give to employers as well.
Yeah, definitely. Any more ideas about what we need to be doing next, or...?
The next podcast.
Yeah,
Who's
exactly.
going to join us next?
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully you might be able to join us on the sofa. We want to keep these really informal, let you know a bit more about what we do at Pathway, and also speak to some really key people in the industry who can hopefully come and sit underneath this bad boy. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us for the first one. Thanks, Iz.
Thanks.